CFB Recruiting Weekly. My name's Bruce Badgley. I'm from EasternPAFootball.com and also the Sports Stream Premium Network. I'm joined by Mr. Andrew Cohen, who's president and CEO of Get Recruited Consulting. We've got a very special guest that I'll let Andrew introduce as we talk about high school coaches and the recruiting process here. Andrew, take it away.
I appreciate that, Badge. Real excited to have Coach Brady on this evening. Coach Brady's a guy that, it's a funny story. I'll be quick here. We got to know each other because we were both coaches in the Patriot League. He was at Georgetown, and I was at Bucknell. And then we were both going to the convention, and we actually were on a plane together, and we really hit it off just as friends. And we knew so many people that knew each other, and it's networking. That's college football. And the next thing you know, we had breakfast. And the next thing you know, that spring, I had my first camp at Malvern Prep where he was the head coach. And ever since then, we've had a great relationship. He's a very, very good football mind. He's unbelievably organized. I've been at his practices, at games, and he's done a great job everywhere he's been. He's turned the programs around, most recently as the head football coach at St. Mary's Riken in Maryland. So very well respected football coach, great guy, and just a good teacher. And we've charted a few times to maybe get together and coach together. It just hasn't worked, but maybe someday. So thanks for joining us, Coach Brady. And
it's an honor. I appreciate you guys having me tonight. Thank you so much and for the kind words.
No problem. Coach Badge, where do we want to go? Is it okay if I take over a little bit here?
Yeah, take over a little bit. We
want us to be fun, you know?
Yes, exactly. We want it to be fun.
What I want to do quickly is I want to give an offer to everyone that has a chance to listen to this. And the offer is involved with me as a former college football coach for 22 years at different schools, divisions 1, 2, and 3. I'd like to give everyone a free film evaluation. And that is something that's extremely important. You need to know what you're doing well, what can improve, how it can improve, but also with the recruiting process, I'm a big believer. You got to be looking at the right schools. And you don't know what the right schools are until you have a professional evaluation by someone like me, and it's going to be free, but also someone that knows what the college coaches are looking for. Coach Brady, very honestly, does most of my quarterbacks. He's placed, I think, 8 or 9 Division I quarterbacks over the years, and he does a tremendous job. And but I do most of the other positions. But please reach out to us. My phone number, you can call me anytime, is 570-428-2872. My handle on Twitter is get with a capital G __ recruited with a capital R. Those are probably the 2 easiest ways to reach out to me, but please reach out. We'll give you a film evaluation with you and a parent. We really want a parent on so they understand where you are in this process, and we go from there. So thanks, Coach Badge. Just wanted to make sure we got that across right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you ask the first question to Coach Brady?
The first question? You're supposed to be the question guy.
No, look.
Don't at me like that.
Well, as you know, obviously being an experienced coach here, Aaron, talk a little bit about what you think, a high school coach's, position is in the recruiting process.
No, that's a great question. I think it depends who you ask. I think every coach has a different way of looking at that. I've always thought that was one of my main jobs as a high school football coach. I did college football for 8 years, and I've been head high school coach now for over 12 years. But I always thought that my job was 2 things. One was to make sure it's a memorable experience, because at my high school where I went, I had a great experience. Still some of the best friends in my life, like all of us. Football is that kind of game. And the second part was to make sure my guys got to the best place possible for them. And I think one of the biggest misnomers when looking at colleges is everybody says, "Oh, that's a great school." Everybody likes to throw out names. But what's a great school? A great school is the one that fits you the best. And that may be Salisbury, that may be F&M, that might be Penn State, right? But I think too many people get caught up with, well, that's a great school. Well, the problem is they're all great schools. All these universities and colleges are in business for a reason. I think at the end of the day, coaches want their kids to go on, but it's also a matter of how much time they have, and that could be one of the issues that coach has. If I have to teach 5 classes a day and be a high school football coach and deal with recruiting, that's a lot. Now, fortunately, I've been at private schools my whole high school career as a coach. So I've had the time to make all those calls and do all those things. And it's a lot of work. And I don't think people realize how much work it is until you get involved with it. But what Andrew does, for these kids and knowing the people, that's really the biggest thing, is having the contacts, reach out to people, talk to them. I'm constantly sending emails and information out about my own players, because you have to. These college coaches are busy. There's a lot of kids out there, and to try and get our guys in front of them, that's really what our effort is. And obviously, as a parent, once you have kids, you get it. You know what I mean? Like, you love your kids. You want to have the best opportunity possible to be successful. So every parent is ultra like, I got to do this, I got to do that. And I think one of the things you need to do, go to your high school coach first and see how much support and help he's given you. And most of them are really good. But you also need to know what you shouldn't be doing. People waste a lot of money in this process. These, combines and some of the stuff these people do. But you get with someone like Andrew, who really cares about the kids, understands the process. And he actually mentioned something earlier, to find out where you are, like really where you are in the recruiting process. Not just getting, for lack of a better word, getting blown smoke. Like, you're told, like, hey, what's your height? What's your weight? What's your speed? How athletic are you? There's so many intangibles. And like I tell my kids all the time, it's gotten so competitive across the country that it's really hard to get a scholarship right now, and all the help you can get is needed.
So just to, a few points that I think that was very well said. For one, with the whole high school coaching thing, it's not a knock on high school coaches, but if they have either a full-time job or or they're a teacher full-time, I don't know where they get enough hours in the day to really, really help out a student athlete. Like, emailing's fine, but coach will tell you emails are not even, getting responded to anymore. It's got to be phone calls, text messages on Twitter. It's got to be something direct. You know what I mean? And then, in all fairness to the high school coach, where do they get the time to do that? And that's part A. And then B, something he was talking about is you really need to make sure you're looking at the right schools. So getting that evaluation that tells you, you're a good player, but you're probably at this level. But hey, if you can gain the weight or get a step faster, but realizing those things can be tough. But in the long run, for a family, it's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of frustrations if you start with the right game plan. And you can be, I could tell a player, hey, you're Division II, and then you have to do A, B, C, and D to become a 1AA or FCS player, and then it's up to them to do those things. And I'm not going to tell you have to grow 4 inches. I'm going to try to be realistic, That was my problem. I mean, if I only had like another 5 inches and 5/10 off my 40, I would have been. I wasn't. So.
You've been a stud. And he made a great point. I was going to add one thing in: is you can really waste time. You have to get on college campuses and work out in front of college coaches. That's how you're going to get recruited now. You have to be in front of these guys. They want to see you in person. Your film's your resume. We're the only sport left where it still matters. Everything else is club sports, right? But in football, your football is your film is your resume, but they want to see you in person at camp. That's a big deal. So if you're a lineman and you're 6'2" and you drive 10 hours to Clemson, okay, personal story, right? That's not a smart decision, right? Because they're not going to recruit you. It's not a good decision. So that's one thing where I think working with Andrew and with me, you get a chance to actually understand what makes sense, and where I should be going, because you really can spin your wheels. And if people aren't honest with you, you'll spin your wheels and waste a lot of time, and I tell my kids all the time, like, everybody wants to go to Division I, and I grew up at a high school. We had 4 Division I players in 60 years, I think it was, and where I'm at in the Washington Catholic League, no, I'm serious, but in the Washington Catholic League, every team has, 8 to 9 guys, the good teams, at least every year going to Division I. Our school have had a couple, in the last couple of years since I got here. But that's not normal. You're not supposed to have 8 or 9 guys go to Division I from one high school. And people get in that habit, like, well, that's what should happen. Well, no. It was just we were fortunate to have a great influx of talent. Plus, these are private schools, and everything's earned. It's all about where you're at and, working towards that. So I think that's an important piece of this, just playing off what Andrew said.
So you would consider one of the big things that is now different about the recruiting process is the fact now that the emphasis by the schools on you actually paying them a visit to be considered to get a scholarship?
It's really big. They want to get you on campus. They want to see you. And part of it is they want to make sure that you're definitely interested. I've had some really good, players over the years. But the thing I think one of the other misnomers of recruiting is kids are going to get 30 offers. Very few kids will ever get more than 2 or 3 Division I offers if they do get one. Like all this stuff you see on social media and all that, who knows what's true and what's not. Some offers aren't even committable, right? They give you an offer, but it's not committable. So what does that mean, right? So I think at the end of the day, though, you got to figure out where you want to be, and you can get ahead of the game. I have my guys. Junior year is a big year for us, I think, as far as like getting yourself set up and ready. And like this time coming up to it, or a sophomore, junior year, go to spring football practice, get on some campuses. Don't only meet the football staff, meet the admissions staff too. And have an idea. Look at your transcript as well to make sure you're going to the right places. And if you need help with that, that's what we're here for, to help you to find those right places. And then you have the spring recruiting when the guys come through in April and May. Understand those schedules, when it's dead and when it's not, what their rules are. I've had so many parents try and call a college coach. He doesn't call them back. Well, because he can't. Right?
And that's what, not to interject, but that's what's great about Andrew's service is the fact that he knows all of that. I mean, of who he can and can't contact, who he can get who he can get his clients in front of at that particular point, and what they should be doing in accordance with that. Not only the regular camps, but then, hey, now's the training time because it's a dark time or what have you, right?
Coach Badge, can I interrupt here for a second? I want to add something to what Coach Brady said before I forget. He's 100% right that at the scholarship level, for sure, FCS and FBS, they want you to go to their camp, okay? Unless you're the best guy in the country, or you're a major college guy and a 1AA guy says you got an offer here no matter what. But I do a lot of talking to coaches at all levels consistently. I mean, this evening I had a text conversation with the new head coach, Mike Elko, at Duke University, and another former player who we had on our show, Justin Lustig, who's at Vanderbilt. But what are they really looking for at these camps is not only obviously how fast you are and how athletic you are, but the good coaches, this is their extra chance to see who's coachable, who can they teach something to where a kid can comprehend it and then actually do it. That's what I call coachability. And that is big. I used to call guys that couldn't do drills. I used to call them drill killers. You know what I mean? They couldn't screw up any drill. But along those lines, who's competing? Who's a leader? Who's trying to win everything? And so those are the little things. If it's close with you and another guy, they're taking that guy who's competing, who's a leader, who's coachable. And those things, the good programs are evaluating for sure.
Another thing you need is an agent, really. And that's really where, Andrew comes in, Coach Cohen, is someone's a middleman. For my own kids in my program, like I'm the middleman because they can't call the kid, they can't call the parent. They need somebody to communicate with and somebody that's tuned in and has those numbers and has those connections. That's really the biggest difference at the end of the day. And that's where it's going to really help you. If you're not getting that exposure you think you need, that's the difference maker, is be able to make those connections to those people. You know what I'm saying, Bruce?
Yeah, and the common thread, and this is, I think, our third or fourth show here. The common thread is how valuable the relationships that you have, and how all of, Andrew was just dropping names, but that's important. I mean, they're going to listen to Andrew or someone who they've got their trust in when they are so tight on time, and literally their job's on the line by,
That's a great point.
Getting the right kids in.
Their time is so small. I mean, we've been college coaches. We know the amount of time you have for film. So if I can make a comment to you guys out there about highlight films, make them short, make them your highlights. They're called highlights for a reason. Don't make it 9 minutes long, and show all different things you can do for your position that make you want to recruit you. Coach Loxley told me a great thing a couple of years ago. He goes, I need guys. I'm in the Big Ten. I have to beat Ohio State. I have to beat Michigan, right? In order to beat those guys, I need guys that can help me beat those teams. No different than if I'm at Georgetown or I'm at F&M or wherever. I got to be able to beat certain people, right, to get to that next level. So you got to be better than the guys I got, but your highlight film has to show me those things. Just want to add that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I think the big thing in what I do is, very honestly, every year I have a few kids that are FBS kids. They're mainly kids that develop late or kids that hire us early that we help develop, and then they're ready to go. I'm going to be upfront that the majority of our guys are FCS, Division II, Division III, and NAIA guys. And the reason being is a lot of those kids at that level can get unseen. And so it's my job to make sure they get evaluated. I
Absolutely.
give a family a fair evaluation, and I tell them those are the schools that we'll try to place them at. No guarantee, but I'm not going to tell a kid who's a Division II kid that he's an FCS kid. So with that being said, part of the biggest challenge of a high school coach or a student athlete, the biggest challenge is just getting that film evaluated by the college coaches. Coach Brady and I have been talking about this lately, how it seems like it's harder than ever, but that's all I do for a living. So I'm on the phone, I'm texting, I'm on social media messaging guys, and I can do it every day for hours. I'm on social media for hours every day. But if you're a high school coach, I don't know how the expectations can be that they're going to be on the phone for hours a day. They got a regular job and they're the coach. So that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely.
Coach Brady, I mean, how much should a family and a player empower themselves, in this recruiting process?
Great question. You definitely have to be engaged and involved. One of the biggest things I can tell you advice-wise is if someone gives you a name or number to call, you need to call them. You need to be checking your Twitter. You need to be following coaches online. One of the first things I do when I get somebody that's working with me is have them go on my Twitter and look at the coaches on my Twitter. It's Coach_Brady. And the same with Coach Cohen. You can find a lot of people on there that you can follow so they can contact you. But at the end of the day, it's your process as well. Your high school coach is going to have multiple kids. Coach Cohen is going to have a certain number of people he works with, and that we're just trying to push forward. But at the end of the day, you also need to be advocating for yourself. Now, one thing I do know that you can get help from getting recruited is what things should I be putting out there? What are those things that are going to help me look good, and what is not good? And I think that's one thing where, Andrew has done it so long and so well. He knows what college coaches are looking for and what they don't want to see. There are some things you can put out there that, are a negative to a coach. One thing I can tell you that's a definite positive is be a multi-sport athlete. Go out there and compete in multiple sports and be competitive. Because I know as a college coach, we like those guys. If you're good enough to come play at Georgetown or Duke or Clarion, some of the places I coached at, if you're good enough to play football for us, you're probably going to play another sport, if not 2 other sports at your school, and be a contributor. I think that's important for guys too. We want competitive guys, and there's so many things that matter now along those lines. I think that's where, Andrew can be a big help to you.
I'm just thinking, I just had a conversation a few minutes before we got on this right here. And it's a young man from California, quarterback. And his dad made a good point. And I usually think of these things, but he's like, he's a pretty good basketball player. Should we put some basketball plays and put that on the site and get that out. And I said, you know what? I'm sorry I didn't bring that up sooner, but that's a good point. But I said, let's make sure that there are plays that show his athleticism. So playing defense, rebounding, slam dunking.
Awesome. Yeah.
In all seriousness, but not everyone can jam like me at my 5'7" with my great ups. But but in all seriousness, I don't want to see your perimeter game if I'm a college coach. I want to see drives to the basket. I want to see defense. I want to see athleticism. But, it's our job to think outside the box and what are things that we could promote for a student athlete. And some people will value that. There's a lot of college coaches that say, hey, they really, really want to see a kid play basketball. How does he compete? How does he move? And, but then
it's got to be good for big men too. Just like you talked about, Andrew, they got to be able to bend. They got to be able to play defense. They gotta be able to use their feet. So a big man playing basketball, why not? If some guy who's about 6'5", 300 pounds, and he's dunking a basketball, you don't think a Division I coach is like on the phone?
Yeah, I mean, I have a guy that we've done one of these before with, George Hawanitz. He played for me at Bucknell. He's now the head coach at Valley View in Pennsylvania High School.
Yeah.
His son is a very, very talented college prospect as a junior. He tore his ACL this year. But, I mean, he's 6'5", 225, and he's big. He's going to be really big. But, since he missed so much time this year, he put some basketball plays in. And a lot of the college coaches, they do like it. A lot of them have said, hey, that's pretty athletic for a guy. So I think that if you can do things like that, I know we're getting off the subject, but I still think it's important. If you can get a workout in where if you can slam dunk a basketball, they want to see that. It shows your ability to transfer your weight, and it shows your explosiveness. Maybe you're a quarterback and your high school doesn't run a lot of routes, then you need to make a workout tape with all the 3 steps, all the 5 steps, all the rollouts to the right and to the left. Receivers, show that you can run patterns, show that you can change directions, show that you can catch the ball. It's just you're always thinking of what else can I do to show someone that I deserve to play at that level. Now, that could make you a borderline guy. Like, let's say you're here, is he Division II or is he one, FCS? I keep calling it 1AA. But that can be something that checks another box that helps you. And then, then he goes to camp and he runs great times. So your film is one thing. Making a workout film is another thing, and then your camp performance, obviously, is another. So,
hey, Bruce, I want to add one thing, too,
sure,
just in case there's some young guys on here that are going to listen to this, is your grades matter tremendously. The academics, you can be eliminated from so many schools so quickly. And I think a lot of my kids, over the years I've worked with, with Andrew and my own players, the drop down, if you're not an FBS kid, I've been fortunate to have a bunch of those. But the drop down, when you go to FCS, most of those schools are really academic. It's hard. If you don't have the grades, you might even skip that whole FCS level, to be honest with you. So from freshman year on, you got to be invested in your grades and trending upwards. I always tell my guys, if you're not getting A's and B's, then why aren't you getting help? Some people think C's are okay. You get a D, all of a sudden you want to get help, right? Well, why don't you if you get a C, get help. Get all A's. If you want to be a quarterback, you better have A's. It's so competitive now. If I'm a recruiter and I got 2 kids that are even athletically, and this happens a lot, where you have kids that are pretty even across the board. Andrew can tell you, he's been in those meetings. It comes down to, okay, what are their grades? Well, I got a kid who has all A's and 1 B compared to a kid who has some C's and a B. I'm taking the A kid all day long, right, Andrew?
Yeah, especially a quarterback. I think with today's you got to be very bright to be a successful quarterback. You got to be able to process information. Absolutely.
And part of this is high schools now have so many resources compared to when we went to school. Bruce, when we went to high school, we didn't have all these resources they have now. It's crazy the amount of help they have. So use your resources. The teachers want you to have success. I think, when kids gravitate to understand that and use what's available to them, they just do so much better.
And most of these schools now, they're, like first period is a lot of like study hall. where football coaches have their hands, on the players. They're either like lifting or studying or whatever. And I'll be honest with you, this is just a case in point, okay? And I'm just going to cite a conversation. I was at the Maxwell Awards, okay? The Mini Max is here in Pennsylvania just a couple days ago. Very high visibility kid that I'm friends with. And we're standing around, we're having the conversation. The football coach, you know what he's asking? He's not asking about his workout. He's asking about his classes, and I thought that was so refreshing, is that, because there's, so much, obviously, emphasis on the grades or whatever like that. He's not asking about the workouts and how he's doing. He's asking how the classes are going. And I thought that was just incredible. And this is, one of the big guys, big recruits in the country, obviously. And the coach is asking about grades. And I thought that was fantastic.
That's phenomenal.
It is. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that's where it's at right now. It's so competitive that, anything you can have on your side that checks a box, and maybe you have more checks than the guy next to you, high character, work ethic, grades, film, tests well. You're going to these camps over the summer. You have to be prepared. You have to practice the 5-10-5 shuttle. You got to practice the vertical, the L drill, the 40, because if you practice them, you'll be better at them. So everything's being judged.
Right.
Unfortunately, these kids are under a lot of pressure right now. So make sure that you don't leave any rock unturned, realistically.
Well, that's what you talked about as well. One of the best pieces of advice that I've heard throughout all of these things is to start early. Okay, that the kids need to, even though they're, obviously they may not have the tools yet, but to go through the process just so they know what the process is like, so that when it really matters, they're not doing this for the first time. I mean, there's rehearsals before movies. I mean, you need practice.
Right. I think what Badge is saying, go to a camp as a 9th grader and a 10th grader and get the butterflies out then before it really counts, putting yourself in those situations where you're competing against higher level players, older players, and see at where you're at. And then you can also see what you need to do to surpass those guys.
Yeah. So many things have come out of, these few shows that, Andrew and I have been, done, and I've been so privileged to, meet, guys like yourself, Coach Brady, and all the other coaches that we've had. And, the single biggest thing I can say is that people just need to give Andrew a call. I mean, he's willing to talk to you. No, I mean, he's willing to talk to you. People really need to get an expert, tell them what truly is going on. And from that, then you can make educated decisions on this process, because it's so complicated, so long, and you don't want to waste money doing it, right?
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I think that sometimes I'll talk to families that will call me and they'll say, we're not getting any feedback. Well, who have you sent your film to? Ohio State and Penn State. And so I'm always very honest, but I'll be like, your son's a pretty good player, but the reason that he's not getting responses is because he's not that good a player, and I don't mean to be negative to anyone, but I don't help anyone if I'm not honest, so if you're an FCS player or even a lower level FBS player, the Penn States of the world, they're not gonna respond. They have to recruit the best players in the country to win. So
here's a question that's just come to mind to me. So there are obviously some schools that basically seek out players, and there are other schools where players seek them out. Where is that line in the sand, right? I mean, Ohio State is the one seeking you out. Somebody typically isn't going to send their film to Ohio State, and they're already going to know who they want before they even get there. So where's that line in the sand in Division I or, FCS on, where that makes a big difference of getting film to a school.
Well, I think, though, that a good program is always willing to keep their eyes open to someone they might not know about. We had a kid a few years ago that went to Penn State. He was from Chicago. They don't usually recruit Chicago very much, but I mean, this kid was 6'5", 295. He played angry. You know, he was physical. But he wasn't on their radar, and we sent it to him and kept sending it to him. And then eventually, you know, they opened it up and said, "Who is this guy? He's pretty good." And that's where he went. He went to Penn State, and then, well, how it usually goes, Penn State offers him, then he got another 10 offers or 5 offers, whatever it was.
Right.
But I do think at Division I, a lot of their offers, they're kids that have reached out to them, you know, not always. And tell me if you think I'm wrong, Coach Brady, but there are kids that they don't know about, you know. I think when you're talking FCS and lower, they're hunting, and they have to watch kids that they don't know about, because they don't know about every kid, and more kids could play at lower levels. You know,
I think that's a great point. They definitely scour the country more than a Division I would. Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, and at some point, you know, as a student athlete, you got to kind of figure out, and that's where I think Andrew's advice comes in, and that people trust him, is he kind of knows where you're going to be. And he also, one thing Andrew does that I like, is he also asks other people. You know, your film's going to be seen by a lot of people. May not be a guy who's at, you know, Penn State, but he's going to ask some other people that have knowledge, you know, and say, "Hey, what do you think about this kid? You know, where do you think he could play?" And it also helps the process, because the more people that see your film, the better. You know, it's just like football is just a big collection of people. Yeah, Bruce and I were talking, you know, before we got on here about that. It's all networking to people we know, and every coach has a huge network. Football coaches know a lot of people. You know what I mean? It's like if you saw Andrew or my cell phone, the number of cell phone numbers we have is ridiculous. If you put in coach, you get like 10,000 people show up, you know, like, but that's the advantage we have, is we know those people, and most people don't realize it. Like a parent, it's kind of funny, you know, parents will call the office phone of these colleges and, well, they're just not getting back to me. Well, number one is they don't answer those calls ever. If you don't have their cell phone, you're not going to reach them. And if they don't know who's calling them, they're not going to answer, right? They always think, you know, the middleman comes in again. Andrew will be like, "Hey, here's this kid's number. He's going to call you at 7:00 on Wednesday night." Okay, cool. And then he'll answer. But all the time, like, there's so many times where, you know, a kid will call and say, "Well, coach, I've called him 3 times a day for the last 4 days. He hasn't answered one time." Well, doesn't know who you are. I don't know how you got his cell phone number, but however you got it, good for you. But that's the connective part you have to have to kind of get to these guys. Because, I mean, imagine how many phone calls, especially now with social media and the network we have, the amount of, you know, stuff they're getting in emails and phone calls and Twitter as a college coach. You know, I can't even imagine the number they're getting.
Wow. Well, listen, it's we could probably go on for hours here, but, you know, we're definitely going to have to get Coach Brady back on, Andrew. I think we've only scratched the surface of, you know, just the discussion that we're having related to not only, you know, this topic, but many other topics. And so, listen, Coach Brady, thank you very much for joining us here on CFB Recruiting Weekly. We're going to have to get him on again, Andrew, because we have a lot more to talk to Aaron about. So anything in conclusion there, Andrew?
No, again, it's been a great show. I've enjoyed talking to you guys. Thank you, Badge. Thank you, Coach Brady. But, like, please, any questions about this process, but most importantly, reach out to me and get a film evaluation. Get _ recruited with a capital G, capital R on Twitter. 570-428-2872 is my cell. Reach out to me. Let us help you, and we'll answer any questions that we can. So thanks again, guys, for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I got one last thing, too, for everybody out there, is don't ever be afraid to ask. The worst thing you're going to get is a no. And taking the time to talk to Andrew or myself is definitely worth it. you don't have to always say yes to us either. You know what I mean? But take the time and do your due diligence and talk to people so you can make an educated decision.
Well, you can see Coach Brady's email there. It's been up underneath his video there, the whole time. And then you've seen Andrew's information, pop in and out throughout the entire process here. And so listen, give these guys a call. Like I said, the worst thing that's going to have happen is that they're going to give you good information, because they're always going to give you good information. So listen, thank you very much, guys. All right. We'll be in touch. Take care now. All right.